What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Classic Octane. I am Taylor. So today I'm about to jump into this customer CB550 build we have here in the shop. But I wanted to take this opportunity to not only show you the kind of before of this project, but also maybe walk you through a little bit of what the process looks like when I build a bike for a customer. So from the initial contact, whether that be through email or Instagram or whatever, to having the bike totally complete. So I'll kind of walk through each and every step as I go through the condition of this bike and tell you what our plans are for it. So when a customer first reaches out, the big question is, do you already own the bike or do you need a donor bike that we're going to build for you? This particular customer obviously already owned the bike. So I say, okay, let's start with an overview of what's the condition of the bike. What do you know about it? How long have you owned it? Does it run? You know, try to get as much information as I can to build this kind of profile in my head of what the project is starting out as. I had the luxury of this particular bike because it's a local customer, I could actually go pick it up and give it a full once-over, talk to the customer in person about, have you thought about going with, you know, different style pods? What color tank do you want? Kind of starting that design process. If it's a customer like most of my past customers where they have to ship the bike, I don't really have that luxury. So I have the customer send me pictures of their bike currently, and then also pictures of what they want it to look like. You know, what kind of inspirational builds have you seen? Do you like, you know, okay, you send me a picture, I really like this style handlebar, but I prefer the tank to be this color. And I can start to build an overall, here's what we're starting with, here's what our end goal is, and start to connect some of those dots. So for this particular bike, we did that process, but then I also went, picked up the bike, brought it back here to the shop, gave everything a full once over and said, hey, here's some stuff we didn't know was an issue. We should address X, Y, and Z. And then we can go through the kind of refining process of, here's the estimate, here's your budget. You know, do we need to remove anything to be able to hit your budget? You know, a riding bike is obviously more important than just a bike that looks good. So, you know, we can start to weigh the pros and cons of each and every component and then come up with the final estimate. So we are past all of that on this particular build. We've already gone through the bike. We have the estimate. It's already been approved. We have the deposit. I have parts on the way. So let me walk you through kind of what I found when I was giving this bike a once-over. So the first thing I noticed on this bike was the electrical system, or the lack thereof. So the overall build of this bike, we're not going for some crazy high dollar show build. We're going for a super fun bike to ride around town that's reliable, that looks good, but doesn't break the bank. So we wanted to add turn signals. This bike has no signals whatsoever right now. And then of course, you know, a proper headlight, a brake light, tail light, all of that kind of stuff. Indicators, you know, low oil pressure, neutral light, high beam, low beam indicator, all the stuff you'd find on a stock bike. As I gave it a once over, this bike has none of those things except for a headlight. Doesn't even have a brake light or anything. So when I started to dive in of why that was, I discovered that at some point, somebody just gutted most of the wiring harness from this bike. These handlebar controls just go right into the headlight and are literally just chopped off and electrical taped. Same thing with the controls on this side, the start button, the kill switch, everything is just chopped off and electrical taped. So we ordered a complete main wiring harness for this bike. We're basically going to be starting from scratch. That's also going to really help modernize everything, and we're not going to have to worry about old crusty wiring going forward because, like I mentioned, we want this to be a super reliable bike. So I also discovered some interesting wiring problems back here. So at some point in this bike's life, somebody put a lithium-ion battery in here, which is totally fine. I do that on most of my builds. This is actually the same exact battery, the anti-gravity 4-cell that we used in the 7-day build. Totally cool with that. We'll be keeping it. They did upgrade to a modern regulator rectifier, which is something you have to do when you're switching to a lithium-ion so that you don't overcharge it. But what they didn't do is any of the rest of this properly. So a lot of the wiring is just chopped off and is kind of open in here, which is really easy to short out. We have like our oil pressure and neutral light are just sitting right here and just taped up because obviously they didn't bother running it to the front because there's no indicator bulbs up there. The main thing I have a problem with is this start button. So at some point somebody got rid of the starter solenoid and just ran the big hot wire straight from the starter up to one side of this switch. The other side of the switch just goes straight to the battery, which means when you hit this button, the starter will go, but all of that current draw is just going through this switch. And I have a hard time believing that this switch is rated for that, which means it's going to overheat and it could melt, it could catch on fire. It's a very bad idea. That is the reason why starter solenoids exist, is so that you don't do stuff like this. So we'll be changing that out. We'll actually be going back to using the start button on the handlebar with a proper stock starter solenoid, and we'll put that switch in the trash where it belongs. We are also going to be doing a custom battery box. Right now this just has a flat metal plate that is not painted, so it's just kind of rusted in place. And we want to relocate the battery from this custom battery box back here to something, you know, a little bit more similar to what we have on the 7-day build. This will be completely removed, and I'll tell you what we're going to kind of do on the back frame here and show you the seat the customer luckily already had picked out for it. So for the back of the frame, we will be doing a frame hoop. This one has already kind of been chopped a little bit, but we will be removing the bulk of this just like I do in all of my builds. The customer did send this frame hoop with the bike. This is very, very thin wall material. I'm guessing this is not any thicker than probably 16 gauge. So I kind of elected to veto this, and we're gonna make our own. So I have a tubing bender and everything. We're gonna do it with proper size DOM tubing because I don't wanna weld a super thin frame hoop onto a customer's frame and have that be a failure point in the future. Obviously, if it's going on the frame of a bike, it needs to be strong. I'd rather way overbuild it than run something like that. So be aware if you're gonna run a frame hoop that you just bought off of eBay or something, make sure they advertise the wall thickness of the material and that you're getting something strong. I would say 0.95 wall is probably good. Like 120 wall is overkill, but that's what I run on pretty much all of my bikes. And it's stronger than what the factory frame is. So we're gonna do that. We are gonna have that little bit of an upswept frame hoop to match the seat. So this customer had already purchased a Tough Side seat. You guys know I'm a huge Tough Side fanboy. Chris is great over there. He's the owner of Tough Side. I talk to him probably twice a week. Really cool guy, does really good quality work. So we're gonna be running this seat. So it'll kind of up sweep right around here. It'll match nicely. It'll match the nice brown grips that we're gonna keep. So it's gonna be pretty cool. I haven't actually run one of the upswept seats yet. That's also gonna be the place where we're gonna mount our tail light. We're gonna do one of the LED strips that we will kind of French in or section into the frame hoop. So it'll be nice and flush. It's not gonna just be stuck on the outside. It'll be a little bit cleaner than that. That'll give us our tail light, rear turn signals, all that kind of stuff as well. And all of this wiring will be kind of gone through. And luckily that main wiring harness that we are gonna get from 4-into-1 comes with all of this new stuff. So I'm looking forward to throwing a lot of this stuff in the garbage. So that's the kind of stuff I'm keeping in mind when I'm giving the bike a once-over, is what kind of modifications have been done to the bike, were they done well, and are those modifications going to be able to work with what our new plan of attack is? So it's like the battery and the voltage regulator, perfect. Those are going to be probably the same ones I would buy for this build, but some of the other stuff isn't usable. One of those things is going to be this air filter. So these are K&N pod filters, which are good quality filters, but I don't know if you can tell or not, it's completely just smashed in here because the CB 500 and 550s have this frame rail right behind the carbs. So if you don't get the proper foam pod filters, you end up with something like this. So this is an aftermarket modification that is not going to work for us. It will probably run okay, it just looks pretty terrible. So we're going to be replacing those. These carbs, if you are buying one of these bikes and it's been sitting for any more than 3 months, I would say plan on going through the carbs. The jets have very, very small passages, and with today's ethanol fuels, they're almost guaranteed to be clogged. So for this bike, since this is just a fun rider, we're not going to be doing a full tear down and rebuild. We're basically going to be pulling them off, pulling the jets out, blasting out all the passages, making sure everything's free and clear, making sure our throttle returns nicely. These are very gummy. So we'll just be giving it a kind of a good once over, but not going all the way to perfect vapor blast finish. That covers most of the kind of have-to-dos on this bike. Everything else we're going to do is going to be cosmetic. So let me walk you through some of that stuff. So when I'm talking about cosmetic stuff with customers, there's some things that are a lot kind of more bang for your buck. That's paint. It goes a huge way towards making the bike look good. So we're going to repaint a lot of the frame of this bike, doing a lot of kind of touch up. You know, when I do a frame hoop and a battery box and stuff, a lot of this is going to have to be kind of ground off and repainted anyway. So that's going to go a long way. We're going to be swapping these shocks out for a little bit different style that are black bodies with like a chrome kind of accent, just to kind of match a little bit more of what the rest of the bike is going to look like. We're going to be painting the wheels. So the big reason why I typically paint my wheels versus doing powder coating is because it saves a lot of money is the biggest thing. A lot of customers don't realize the amount of labor and the cost of powder coat. So when you powder coat a wheel, you need to completely strip that wheel down. You know, obviously tires and, you know, tubes out. You also need to pull the wheel bearings because you're really not supposed to bake the wheel bearings at the temperatures that powder coating is baked at. So you need to strip it down to where it's just metal. Find a good quality powder coater and have them, you know, sandblast it, powder coat, get them back, and then reassemble it with all new wheel bearings. And it's a very, very big difference between the labor of painting a wheel and the labor of powder coating a wheel. And then also, if you scratch powder coat, there is no easy way to touch that up. If I paint this with over-the-counter paint and you scratch it 6 months from now, you can just touch it up. It's not a big deal to you know, be able to just touch up paint. So it might not be as durable, but for the cost savings and the ability to touch it up later, I personally like to go with paint. Moving a little bit forward, we are going to be running, you guessed it, a 12-inch Cone Engineering muffler. This bike already has a 4-to-1. If I had to guess, this is a Mac, I believe, just based on the look of it, which there's no reason to replace that if it's working well and it's not rusted. So this is a 2.5-inch output. We're just going to put that right into one of the mufflers I always run. That'll be quick, easy, and they sound incredible. Moving up to the engine, we're going to pull the clutch cover off as well as the sprocket cover, sandblast them to get rid of this flaking paint, and then vapor blast them to have a nice aluminum finish. Then the rest of the engine is going to get kind of lightly scuffed in some parts, and just basically a hand touch-up. We're not going to pull this engine out and completely repaint it. The customer said, you know, I just want it to be, you know, black and vapor blasted. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just, you know, anything we can do to make the chipped paint a little bit better. So I'm going to try a few different techniques, and we're going to see what we can do just to make that look good. We'll probably do the same thing with the tappet covers. Luckily, the customer had like spark plugs and everything replaced already, so we don't have to worry about those. For the tank, this tank is a nice pearl white now. It is chipping in some spots, but overall the condition of the tank is pretty good. So we're going to sand this down and actually respray it a kind of midnight blue. It'll be this like dark blue metallic kind of color. And then we have the kind of vinyl Honda letters that'll go kind of right here in the center of the tank. The customer already had those because obviously the factory Honda logo has been shaved off of this one. The inside's already been coated, so all that's in good shape. We're not going to have to worry about that. We're just going to be changing the color up just because the customer prefers a dark blue. Let's move on to the front. On the front of the bike, we're going to be ditching the big stock speedometer, running one of the mini Speedo, 2.5-inch diameter. That also has the built-in indicators, so we're going to be able to have that like low oil pressure, neutral light, that kind of stuff. That's going to be mounted nice and low and in the center, which right now is where the ignition switch is. We're going to move that down to where the factory ignition switch would go, which is right here under the tank. We're also going to be taking these drag bars off and going with a black Clubman style bars. So it'll drop these down a little bit, but not quite as low as where they would be if you went clip-ons. We are going to be removing these damaged stock headlight mounts and going with just some nice aluminum ones, which means we're going to have to ditch these stock dust boots because they mount to the bottom side of this. Just go with a small little dust boot that's about yay big. Obviously paint the front wheel black to match. The front brakes and everything, I don't believe we're going to touch those. They seem to be operating just like they should. It's already got a brand new headlight bulb and headlight housing. We're going to need to run some LED flashers up here. I haven't decided which direction we're going to go. I actually just picked up some flashers that I thought were going to be really cool, nice small ones, but I don't think they're bright enough, unfortunately. So I'm still on the lookout for a good quality, small but bright and affordable signal. So if you guys have any suggestions, feel free to drop a comment below. Luckily, the bike already has new tires, so I'm not going to have to do tires on this one, which I'm really excited about, because if you guys don't know, I really don't enjoy doing tires. So that's the bulk of the work we're going to be doing on this bike. As you have probably noticed, it's very similar to the 7-day build, which is why I'm not going to be doing super in-depth videos, because I'll bore you guys to death with yet another build that's very, very similar. But I do want to get some content out of this build. The customer is fully on board with me sharing, any and all parts of the process. So if there's anything that I mentioned that you want a kind of in-depth how-to video, do let me know. I mentioned the same thing when I talked about this bike in a previous video, and some people have kind of mentioned some how-to videos that I've already done. So if you guys mention a video that I've already done, I'll try to just link it so you can go and find it easily. But I'm sure we'll find at least 1 or 2 things that I'm going to do that you guys will be curious to see. If not, I can just knock out this build behind the scenes. It won't take me all that long, and then I will do an update video, kind of show you guys everything afterwards. So take a good look at it now. I will post some before pictures on Instagram as well, so make sure to follow me there. And as always, I greatly appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you soon.